I almost like love giving people the bare minimum info, like have fun, practice a lot. That means whatever ideas and concepts they have, they can just fully explore those with no one telling them, oh no, your idea is wrong because of XYZ. The thing I figured out in lockdown was...
In this second episode of the FPV podcast, I'm joined by yet another drone racing world champion who has not only helped to pioneer the future of racing, but is also one of the most humble and down-to-earth people you'll ever meet. Today we're uncovering how he's made drone racing into his full-time career, how he constantly battles burnout, and we even touch a bit on how he designs his FPV drones. Thanks for coming on today, Thomas. Really do appreciate it. Do you want to introduce yourself and also what you do in this wonderful world that we're in to the audience?
Okay, so my name is Thomas Bitmatta, or BMS Thomas in the drone racing industry, and I primarily race drones, but I also do a lot of the design work and development work, testing, cinematic filming. We have a YouTube channel, which I don't think we've actually uploaded to in a few months, so I've got to get back to that, but yeah, do a bit of everything and enjoy all things fun, FPV and RC.
Main. So you just into FPV drones, but I think you mentioned there you are also, RC. What other RC stuff are you doing?
Okay, so FPV is my main. That is basically what I do full time. But I actually started from fixed wing, and that's something I've been getting back into since around 2021. So flying like combat wings at the flying club. Lately, I've been really enjoying electric ducted pins. I have a 70mm F18 that I fly around sometimes, and then also an Edge 540 that I do that I use for some 3D aerobatics, and that's been super healing, super therapeutic. Doing that like once a week, mix it in with some FPV acro and drone racing. That's sort of the main RC stuff I enjoy. Very occasionally in the wintertime, I'll pull out an RC car and do some drifting, but I don't really have the room for that, so.
Yeah, I can imagine there's quite a few drones around at your place, and obviously fixed wing takes up quite a bit of space.
Yeah, I gotta probably move on a few planes soon. So one of the guys at our local club, he actually has a YouTube channel, Aussie RC Airspace, and I think Aussie RC Playground is his car one. He's a really good pilot, and he has a really bad habit of selling you with how good his bloody flying is. Like you'll see him fly a plane, and he flies planes, flies around, figures them out, tunes them up, and then sells them and gets a new plane. Like, he just loves the experience of trying a new plane and figuring it out. So he'll fly this thing, get it dialed into absolute perfection, and then say, oh yeah, I'm going to sell it next week. And then I'll go, you're going to sell it? I mean, don't mind
That's
if I
real
do.
tempting.
So I'm like,
that's real tempting.
Yeah, I've just became like a secondhand storage between myself and Dad. So we've got like 4 of his planes already.
That's sick. So what is the fixed wing side of things? Is that more just like hobby then and just for fun? Or is there like some aspect that you could get into with that at some point, like racing or whatever? Is there a racing scene for that side of things or not really?
There is a racing scene, but it's really small. It's one of those areas where I think there's so much potential, and I think I might have mentioned it to you actually at the NZ Open that I want to create a fixed wing air race. It's just one of those things where I think the barrier of entry is a little higher in the sense that you need a lot more airspace to fly a plane. So it's sort of not quite like quads where you can fly them at least in a small park and sort of part around, or if you've got a big open area, just absolutely send it. With a plane, you do need space to begin with. So I think that already cuts down the amount of people that have access to it, even though the cost of entry is pretty similar.
That's fair. That's fair. That's a fair point. So I guess let's have a little chat about your FPV racing, because obviously that's your main gig. So what sort of racing are you doing? And like, I mean, obviously I met you at New Zealand Opens, and as far as I know, you don't live in New Zealand. So like, obviously you travel around a bit. What sort of, let's have a chat about some of your racing side of things.
Okay, so for the racing side, I mainly race open class. So that's sort of your traditional 5-inch racing drones. There might be, depending on the race, you have to carry LEDs or maybe like a power limit or a battery size limit. But in general, it's pretty flexible, the rules. And I do a lot of sort of single event racing, so not championships, but say like the International Open, the Multi-Ship International Open. A lot of the FAI races, so hopefully, fingers crossed, going to make it to the grand final this year. And I believe they also announced another race in May in Korea that's got FAI points, so I might go hop across the pond to Korea for that. And then, yeah, racing around. I'll be doing a bit of Japan Drone League this year. That's really fun. So I do a bit of everything. I've done some league racing, like DR1. That was a team racing league back in 2018, where we spent 6 weeks in Europe. So I sort of just take on whatever sort of pops up that I feel like doing that I have the time for. I just love racing. So spec racing, open class, doesn't really matter what it is. If it has ball props and we can race it, I'm probably going to give it a go at some point.
Man, I love it. Why do you love racing? Like, what do you actually love about it?
That is a really interesting question. So this is what I was thinking about a lot over the pandemic, because for me, racing wasn't even a thing you could make a career out of when I started flying, right? And there wasn't even really much racing at all. But then the racing grew along my sort of entry into FPV, and eventually that sort of intersected and that became the job that I do now. I think for me, what I love about racing is the precision flying aspect. Even before FPV, when I was flying fixed wing, I loved the idea of just trying to stay like close to the ground and fly as precise as I can, or try to like use the 3D airspace in a way that looks appealing to me. And then I enjoyed obviously the freestyle side, the close proximity flying, or flying with wings through like between trees and things. And the racing is like the ultimate distillation of that, right? Where in normal sort of practice, you can just sort of, I'm going to not fly this way, I just fly this way, it's more comfortable or whatever. But with racing, you're on a racetrack, there's a lap timer, it's very data driven, and it's sort of very quantifiable, your progress. And so I think for me, that sort of instant feedback of I've done something, how did it work out in terms of lap time or how the quad's flying or sounding, I really enjoy that, get a kick out of that. So I think I race as an outlet of my flying, and it's in the pursuit of trying to be as precise as I can in space and time.
I love it. Wow, yeah, that's a fantastic explanation. That's really cool.
Can I go elaborate a bit more?
All
if
yours.
that's okay?
Absolutely, please do.
The thing I figured out in lockdown was, because I was doing a lot more cinema filming during the pandemic, and I was like, I'm really enjoying this. I'm loving this. What's going on? What do I want to do with sort of my FPV career? Where do I want to take it? And it was sort of that realization that I love racing, and I happen to be really, really good at it. But at the same time, it's out of the love of flying, not the love of racing. We'll have a lot of pilots in our club where they purely fly so they can enjoy the racing. Whereas for me, the racing is just that outlet that lets me fly as a full-time job and sort of lets me enjoy the precision aspect that I get from it. And then also, get to race with people, hang out, and it's all good fun. Don't know if I actually like that, but the way I said that, but that's okay.
No, you definitely summarized it though, in the sense of like, the fact of the actual racing side of things for you isn't necessarily, because I was going to ask, is the competitive aspect against racing against other people, is that like a big part for you, or is it sort of more just like you were saying, an outlet for you and like a challenge against yourself on that side of things? Like, that's sort of what I was interested in hearing about too, is are you going into these races? I mean, obviously you're going in with a point of, being competitive, but is that like a big part as well? Are you like hyper sort of competitive and like always sort of in a competitive mindset, or is it more against yourself that you're just trying to improve even in like these hardcore races?
It's definitely started from myself. And I think that came from the fact that when I got into the hobby, there wasn't any racing. So when I saw someone flying absolutely amazing, that sort of inspired me, I want to do that too, right? That being said, I think as time's gone on and it has become a career, I think my mindset did sort of slowly start to change towards a more like enjoying the competition, or sort of like really pushing myself based on what others are doing. I'm kind of trying to move away from that now, because I'm not sure how sustainable that mindset is for me. So sort of going back to focusing on myself, just having fun, enjoying the flying. And then when it comes time to race, do the best I can with the knowledge I have, and wherever it puts me, it puts me.
That's epic. Before racing, were you doing, so you mentioned you were doing like cinematic and like freestyle side of things. Were you making like any money through the cinematic side of things?
Oh, very little back then, because it was really when it was just starting to get figured out that we can use these for movies and things, right? I did a couple shoots for like a dirt bike clothing manufacturer back in 2016. I did a few other small things here and there, but not the big stuff you get now with like movies and music videos. It was nothing like that at the time. It was sort of just figuring itself out. I think America was probably a year or two ahead of us, where they were actually starting to pick up some interesting bigger time stuff. But for me, the cinematics were purely because I love cinema. I love filmmaking. One of the things I discovered actually back over the pandemic, how much I love making YouTube videos and creating short stories. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor, actually. That's what I was sort of aiming at. So, and then, yeah, somehow ended up as drone racing instead. But I do love that creative aspect, and it's something I do want to get back into at some point.
Well, hey, there's definitely going to always be space with an FPV, especially to keep like the creative aspect going. I think as we continue to, have these technology advancements, like with DJI O3, for example, I never thought there would be a day and any time in the near future where I'd be like, the GoPro can stay at home. But now I'm like, the GoPro can stay at home. Like for my cinematic flying, O3 is like genuinely a game changer. And I feel like I'm the sort of guy that would look at footage and, pick it apart and be like, oh, I don't like that little bit of graininess in the shadows. But like just the fact of like the way that things are going ahead, it just creates more opportunities for us as creatives and pilots to be able to have more creative control. Like, do you get what I mean there?
100%. Even back in 2016, when people started playing with digital links, I remember Dad and I thinking this would never take off, just because, you look at the tennis, right? And then they have their fully controlled environment, and their broadcasting cameras would cut out still like quite often throughout their normal TV streams. But the fact that technologies came so far where it's not only like a HD digital link, it's a HD digital link that's pretty well relentless. It really very rarely breaks up. And it's low latency, which is just insane. I haven't got DJI O3 yet, but I plan to build a setup with it because I really want to dive into more of that sort of acro-y, just exploring again like the old days, or for me, the old days, where I sort of don't go out to parks and sort of enjoy that adventure much anymore. I really want to dive back into that. So that's on the cards of one of the things I need to check off and enjoy.
That's epic. So like, did you what sort of stuff did you start off with then? What sort of flying? Obviously, you're doing freestyle and cinematic, but where are you flying back in these old days? Are you just going down to parks, or are you like going out to like beach fronts and shit? Like, what are you sort of doing?
Absolutely all of the above. So, in the fixed wing days when we used to go exploring, we were really fortunate. One of our friends, FPV friends, had a neighbor that had like a 10 acres of property or something. Was it 10 acres or was it 10 kilometers? No, it was 10 kilometers of property. It was like 10 kilometers by like 5. A massive area. So we used to fly around there, do all our range testing. Then we got to like reserves and things and do like pre-planned flights and formation fly, and say there'd be like a closed road with the lights. Like you'd fly like in between the lights and the road and sort of like stay close, hung on the ground. That's what we used to do. And then when the drones came out, it was the same thing, but now we had the luxury of sort of flying in really tight areas. So instead of having to travel an hour away to fly a fixed wing plane, now I could go just up the road on the way to school and quickly fly in a small park, or, go somewhere bigger, or a car park, really whatever I felt like. So it was sort of flying anywhere and everywhere. If you saw something that looked cool and nobody was around, then you'd just sort of enjoy it. And yeah, some pretty fun videos back from like, if you go back on our YouTube channel to like 2015 and earlier, you sort of get the sense it was like a whole different vibe where there wasn't even, I was something interesting there where you mentioned like, oh, you did like acro and cinema and then got into racing. Back then, there was like no distinction. You just flew. Like if you're a pilot, you did
That's crazy.
everything, and it was no real distinction. It was like, oh yeah, it's like you get like a random Facebook message. Oh, we're going to be at a park at this time. Did you want to come hang out? Oh yeah, okay. And we all go down and do our flying. And hey, there's like 3 trees there. We should like see who can go around those quicker. Just do it. It was sort of not really a organized thing, and there wasn't that distinction of what is this, what is that. You just like, I think it was just all under the umbrella of close proximity flying, because that was like the term we used to use in fixed wing, where it was like with TBS and that they would fly close proximity to objects and things.
I definitely think that's still quite a it's still a thing, not necessarily being so segmented, because I go and hang out with a couple of mates that I've got here in Wanaka, and sometimes we'll go with the intention of racing, and we'll take the race skates with us, set them up, and just when I even say that though, we're not actually timing ourselves, we're not even like actually racing each other, we're just getting around the course as fast as we can. That's like real fun to do.
Yeah, enjoying the track, enjoying the fun of precision flying.
Exactly that. And then on top of that, there might just be a point of, let's just go to this other spot. We've got some massive trees, and let's just go do some like diving and just like freestyle around the place. And, it's just about hanging out, flying the quads, because that's what we love. And then, if you get into the racing side of things, you get and have a little bit of fun competitively. And then obviously, this is the question actually I had that I'm really interested in hearing about. How do you go from, focusing on just having the fun side of things and then going into professional paid racing as a career? Like, what is that time frame and that timeline looking like?
That's a really interesting one. Before I get onto that, I just want to touch on something you said. You nailed like everything I love about FPV is what you said about flying for the fun of it. In Melbourne, there was a time where I think that like that segregation started to happen, where there was almost like freestyles were like scared to go on the racetrack. It's like, oh, I'm not going to be like quick or whatever. It's like, no, it's a track. It's like flying through trees, but it's just gates and stuff. Just enjoy the fun of precision flying. And I'm happy we're coming back around to that, because I just think it's fun, right? Just more people having fun flying cool things, doing cool tricks with cool drones. But yeah, as far as getting
And just hanging out.
yeah, 100%. Hanging out, having fun, precision flying. It's the best thing, well, I think, ever. But on the topic of switching to professional drone racing, back in 2016, I actually had an interview with ABC, and they asked me if I'd like to do it professionally. At this time, we're about to have the first Australian Drone Nationals. So there'd never been an Australian Nationals brand before. Only a year ago, AOFPB, sort of governing body, had been set up. And they came to the local club, did like a quick interview and said, would you like to do this professionally? And as a kid, I'm like, yeah, of course, this is awesome. I get to fly drones everywhere and do filming and racing. That's the dream. But back then, no one was doing it professionally. There was like a couple pilots that had sort of had a crack at it and not sustained it. At that time, actually, there was an American guy, Sean Taylor, who was running professionally. He was probably the only one at the time. And then another Aussie guy, Rec, that's sort of on and off between having like normal work and then going into full-time racing. For me, that transition happened so we did the Australian Nationals 2016. I managed to win that, which is ridiculous. Didn't even expect that, because we didn't really have a reference point of where we were, but we just like had a relatively mistake-free run and managed to work my way up and somehow take the podium. So that was sick. That was crazy. First time flying like the Impulse RC Helix. At that time, no one had seen it before. We just like kept it a secret. It was like the fairy tale story, right?
Yeah.
That happened. That was awesome. That like set my motivation to like the moon. It was already like super high. There's a whole backstory behind that. But at this point, I was like, oh, I love racing. I really want to do this in a competitive aspect. Not knowing if it would be something I could do professionally yet, but just it's something that I wanted to do as much as possible. Come around to 2017, we had the MultiGP International Open, which, once again, I was aiming for like top 64, and then you made it through top 64, and I went to top 32, and I was still in top 16. I'm still there, and then had the finals, and I think I won by like 0.2 of a second. It was like nothing. It was like neck and neck the whole way to the finish line. It was like 4 overtakes in the last lap. It was insane. But yeah, somehow made it through at like 2 a.m. Don't even comprehend it. It was the craziest, most ridiculous environment, and like one of the best memories ever to this day. But as a side aspect of that, one of the pilots there was the son of the chairman of Mission Foods. So Mission Foods, they do like corn chips, all like different Mexican food products, right? And he helped set up a headquarters in Australia, actually about 15 minutes away from where I live. So when he saw an article on Facebook of like this kid from Epping, wins this big drone race, and he's in high school, and sort of just covering what I do and what the race was all about. He contacted the marketing VP in Australia and said, "Hey, we should get onto this and maybe sponsor this or sponsor drone racing." Mission Foods is all about sponsoring like grassroots sports. They do like a lot of like netball, and they actually sponsor like our Aussie rules football, and a few bunch of other different things. And yeah, they approached me, and that was right on the day I finished my last exam in high school. We got that phone call. And so that sort of changed things where I was like, okay, I'm going to take a gap year and try this full time. Worst case scenario, after a year, I've had fun, go back to university or go to university and continue that path. But yeah, went through that year, 2018, and made it through the other side with just enough money in the bank to go, I'm going to try it for a second year. Let's see how we go. And yeah, we're still here today, still running full time somehow. But it's been a wild ride. It wasn't necessarily like a focused direction. I'm going here. I just wanted to race really badly and fly and enjoy all things FPV. And it so happened that the right opportunities lined up at the right times. And yeah, I was in the position to sort of take them. Very, very fortunate. Really, really thankful. But that's how it happened. It wasn't necessarily an intentional direction. It was just sort of the opportunities would come and you just send it and pray for the best.
I love that. That's so good. That's the immaculate timing. That was the last day of school, and like, let's say the last day of your exams, and then bingo, you have the sponsorship come through that essentially carries you through that first year, I presume. And how long have you been racing professionally now then?
I've been racing professionally since the start of 2018. So I technically, you could argue like November 2017, because the day after that exam, like when we had the phone call, we spoke to them a lot after the fact of, okay, this is actually legit. At first we thought it was a phone call. Dad used to do software development for websites. We thought they were main contacting for that, but it was all about the drone racing stuff. So when that happened, the very next day, first day after my specialist maths exam, went out to the flying club and flew from like 9:30 in the morning to like 8 p.m.
Mental.
It was sick. Like I just flew till the sun was gone. It was like the first time I'd ever done that, and it was the greatest feeling. Well, maybe not the great, like on par with like IO and First Nationals. Like it was one of those moments where it's like, holy crap! Like I'm doing this. This is actually like reality.
Well, it's got to be a surreal feeling, not necessarily even just doing something that you love, but knowing that, hey, there's a potential that this can turn into something that I just get to do every single day. I get to fly like this every single day. Like that's got to be a pretty surreal feeling, and you'd be on a pretty high buzz of getting a sponsorship and all that side of things, because it's all, I'm presuming that was all brand new to you, the whole sponsorship side of things. Is that like the first time you got a sponsorship, or were you involved with sponsorships for like flying beforehand on freestyle or something?
We had part sponsors at the time. So 2017, 2016, I got Impulse RC as a sponsor and HQ Prop. So that's all part sponsorships. But then we would work really closely with them. And for example, when Impulse was developing the Helix, they actually flew down with the first prototype for me to fly it, which is like mind blowing, right? So that was already crazy. And then in 2017, we accumulated a few more sponsors, like Voxia, TBS. I don't think we had Tattoo yet. Trying to think of who are our sponsors that we have at the moment. But 2017, a lot of people came on board as hobby sponsors, but then Mission was our first time dealing with a corporate sponsorship. So, which is very different because it's all about the branding, obviously, because they don't manufacture drone parts, right? So it's like, so we're racing their product. It's more of a sort of a co-branding, and it sort of also worked out because I was eating Mission chips beforehand. It was a big motivator though, definitely, to have that new experience and to also have them pretty flexible, because we were like, we've never dealt in this sort of capacity before. We don't know how this works, what you guys want, what you don't want. But they were really flexible and sort of teaching us how they operate with the various other people they work with, and sort of how we can integrate with that system, and also how they can contribute to the FPV scene. So they do sponsor other clubs around Australia, and they do also sponsor the Australian Drone Nationals, which is awesome.
Absolutely
Did
pioneering
I answer the
the start
question?
of sponsorship. Yeah, I don't even know what the question was. I love it though.
Okay, sweet. I was just thinking, wait, did I go on a tangent?
No, no, dude. Honestly, I'm stoked. It's really cool to hear, like, because it's all such a new thing. Like, this is only five or so years ago, or not even 5 years ago, right? Like, it's not actually a long term thing, and realistically, this is the first time that, as you're saying, racing's getting started, and this whole new avenue of a paid of a paid career within a brand new hobby. Realistically, it's crazy cool to hear, like, sort of the origins, almost, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy when you think about how many other sort of RC sports there are. Like, you got the 3D heli flying, your F3A pattern flying, all the aerobatic side, RC cars, and there are a few, I think, professional RC car drivers. But I don't think there's been an RC industry that's been able to support so many pilots, and especially in such a short turnaround where you sort of go back to like pre 2011 and everything was DIY then. There were no specialist parts. Everything's cobbled together. You build it yourself, like down to all the video transmitters, you're hacking apart security cameras and things, right? To all of a sudden you fast forward to 2014, there are now dedicated like hobbyist drone parts. And then 2016, first ever Aussie Nationals. 2015 was the first ever US Nationals. And then 2017, first ever MultiGP. And then from there to, corporate sponsorships coming in. You've got DRL that's paying pilots to do their drone racing, and DCL's coming online. So to have such a massive growth and have that sort of sustain where you can have pilots make a living off of, flying these drones around for racing, not even just the cinema side, but actually in a racing aspect. It's crazy. It's surreal, and it's one of those things that I guess, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. I
Yeah,
love it.
no, it really is cool. And I guess something cool to touch on here too would be the fact that not only is this a brand new side of things with the racing aspect, but you've actually introduced your own frames and your own parts into the hobby now as well, which are commercially available, like to buy online, to buy from stores and stuff. It's like, so what was your thinking going into that? Why do you start designing your own frames?
Right. Okay. So, bit of story time for this. The pilot that got me really hyped to get into FPV was Stunt Double FPV back in 2014 at the first ever Melbourne multi-rotor meet. And the second Melbourne multi-rotor meet we had, I think, in like 2014 of March, was when we had our first sort of race. And I came 16th in that with a drone that we built like 24 hours beforehand, like the day before. And I was like the slowest of the people that made it. Like, everyone below me DNF. But that guy, Stunt Double, used to custom build everything. So he would he'd get the carbon fiber and actually cut it by hand. And I thought that was so cool. And he'd always have these like customized race drones of like different from anything we'd ever seen, or his, film drones he'd used like flying with the GoPro on. They were also like radically different from whatever else was on the market. And that, I guess, got me hyped on sort of the custom, like, I want to build this myself thing. Same with the RC planes too. Dad used to scratch build RC model aircraft. So I've sort of always came from that background of I love designing, I love making things. I used to love Legos and making paper planes and origami and paper crafts. So for me, I've always been into the development aspect. I think it's part of what made FPV so appealing, in that not only could you fly the thing, but you could also create it and play with it and tinker with it and sort of, yeah, do your own research and development and do your own sort of learning on what works and what doesn't. And so for me, the parts that we make are more out of something that I do out of sort of the love for it, right? Realistically, what I should be doing is focusing on training and being like maxing out in my training time, but I do tend to get lost in the design work. Like, even on the weekend, we built a new prototype drone just to see what the result would be. I should have probably been training, but it was like, now I want to test this idea. I want to know if this works or not. So, hopped on CAD, designed something up, got it cut, and then had it flying yesterday. So and crashed it yesterday. So
how did that design go for you? Well, actually, that's a really interesting thing. How many designs are you making? Like, is this a new design each week sort of thing, or like what's the process of that?
it goes on and off. Like I think probably the biggest gap I've had in designing was probably 6 months since I've turned pro. But then when you get stuck into design, you usually don't get it right the first time. So you might design 3 or 4 different things and then have one of those ideas that's like the core of it's actually really good, right? And then from there you develop that further and maybe, hit some roadblocks and pull some bits from the other designs you're working on. It's a lot of that sort of, I would say with design work, 95% of it is thinking and just concept. And then eventually, like that very, very small percentage of the time, you get something that you're like, okay, no, this is really good. We need to actually commit this to a real design. One thing that's changed for me now, probably where more of my designs are actually making it into the real world, is now that we've got CNC routing at home, laser cutting, 3D printing, vacuum forming, I can actually sort of test things that are pretty risky. Whereas before, when we were like, say, tapping into Impulse RC, it's their time you're sort of operating on, right? And as much as they never put any restrictions or anything on me on what I can do, you sort of, you don't want to waste their resources, right? So you tend to do things kind of safely, sort of more thought out beforehand. Whereas now, like the design I made this weekend was something I would never make before. It was just like the most dumbest thing in the world, but I just wanted to test one thing. So I built this drone to test one thing, got the data I wanted, bin the drone, which was kind of sad, but then at least I've got that data now, right? And I know for the next projects that I'm working on, okay, I know how to sort of incorporate this into my next, well, hopefully next race frames or whatever else I need.
That's really cool. It sounds like it's another creative outlet for you as well.
It is. I really love it. I think that's probably the benefit and disadvantage of my brain is I love so many things. There are so many things I want to do, but I also have a habit of overcommitting and doing like everything. Where rather than like specializing in one area. So I really want to, like I said, this year I'm just gonna focus on racing, right? Like I'm not gonna touch CAD at all. And then I probably spent like a good like probably month of time, like as in like work time, like work hours, just like on CAD designing things and building things. So I think it's one of those things I want to move away from so I can be a better race pilot. At the same time, I get so much enjoyment from it that I don't think I can actually truly move away from it.
I guess you don't want to burn yourself out necessarily.
Yeah.
I guess like burning. What do you burn out from racing? Is actually a fantastic question.
Definitely, yes. I
Yeah.
was told it was from that Sean Taylor, Night Fury FPV. He talked about burnout with me a lot when I was sort of just turning pro and sort of things he's been through and how he's trying to manage it. We'd have a lot of heart-to-hearts when I would sort of, when I just turned pro. I think the biggest thing, and it's like, there's two things I think you need to be like quick and great at FPV as far as like a relative to everyone else is concerned kind of deal. You need to fly a lot, which is important, but more important than flying a lot, you need to have fun. And it's sort of being aware of when you're not having fun and working out what changes you need to make to keep it enjoyable, right? I think I have a very bad habit of getting caught up in trying to progress and fast track my learning that I forget to enjoy the flying I have and just like take a chill pill. Like I do this full time. I can blow like a few hours a day just flying at like comfortable pace and just enjoying the skill set I have. I tend to though get sort of lost in trying to like, step up as quick as possible. So I think when burnout happens, it's when you are not having fun.
Have you had burnout multiple times, or is this
Oh
saying
yeah, plenty.
I managed to avoid? Right. Yeah.
I feel like I burnt out like already like 4 times this year. Like it just happens. You do that.
Really?
Yeah, but you have to. I'm getting better at catching it, and instead of like just trying to brute force my way through, actually assessing what's going on and making a change. Even yesterday, I feel like I had a mini burnout where I was sort of, after I broke that drone, I was pretty like demoralized because I was like, I'm not crashing this drone. I'm going to fly it like really close to the limit. I'm not going to crash it. And I crashed it like maybe like 20 batteries into its flight, right? Into its life, right? So I was pretty bummed out. Crashed it, damaged it, had a real like drop in enthusiasm. And it was like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I'm at a field, a really pretty field. It's a lovely day. my emotional state doesn't reflect the life position I'm in. And so I ended up thinking about it a bit more, realized I was actually tired. I didn't have the best night of sleep before. Went in the car, had like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of sleep, came out, and then just flew for fun. Like stuff lap timing, stuff, trying to nail this one area I was having trouble with on the racetrack. And I was like, let's not worry about that. Let's just fly because flying is bloody fun. I did that, and I like, on the first battery off of sleep, my average lap time dropped by like 0.3 of a second per lap. Like straight away. And it's not even like just that mindset shift. So I feel like for me, it's getting used to catching when it's like, when I'm pushing it too far. When I'm sort of getting lost in the data and forgetting that, hey, I'm a human, I should be enjoying what I'm doing. And then bringing it back to sort of grassroots. And then ironically, when you do that and you chill, you end up just going faster and learning quicker. So it's a fine balance, but it's one of those things I feel like it's sort of inevitable. But I'm getting better at like catching it before it sort of spirals and go into not happy mental state.
Yeah, that's definitely that's a great point to think about, not even just for FPV, but for basically any hobby, like, or anything that you do within life, right? Like for myself, if I look at YouTube, there's definitely points in time where I'm like, well, okay, I'm spending a lot of time right now, like doing a lot of planning, and I'm just kind of like, this kind of sucks. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I'm making damn videos that I'm like, I know I love this process. So like something's going wrong here. So it sounds exactly the same as a lot of other things in life. And I guess it must be kind of difficult for you at some points too, when you must like be able to say, I experience burnout, and then other people are like, well, how do you experience burnout? This is like everything I've ever dreamed of.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where no matter where you get, you can always see what the next step looks like, what's up here, right? Like if you could see here, you could see here. If you get your skill level goes here, you can now see here. And so you're always sort of chasing that. I think in the racing aspect too, this is one of the areas I was talking about, like my mindset changing as I became a pro pilot, where pre-2017, I literally just flew for myself, right? Didn't matter what anyone else was doing. I was just doing my own thing. And then, it happened to put me in the right position to, perform well and put me where I am today. But then as you race more, you start to think about what other people are doing that you're not, right? Or, oh, so-and-so has access to this and I don't. Even though realistically, there's plenty of things that I've got that are my own benefits of my life position, right? But you get caught up in that comparison between yourself and others and feel like you need to like make up for it, which is pretty unrealistic, because it's like, the playing set of cards that I've got to work with, based on, upbringing I've got and, where I am in the world, being in Australia versus, say, other pilots from other places around the world. Yeah, they've got things I don't have, but I've got things they don't have. Like, if I try to play their cards, well, I don't have their cards. They're over there. I'm over here. I need to, like, focus on my bit. So it's like trying to get healthy comparison. It's very easy to get lost in that and have very unhealthy comparison that sort of, like, beats you up mentally a bit, and makes you sort of feel like you're just always falling behind. But it's one of those things I've been really working hard to change around and bring it back to, like, I call it 2017 mindset. Like, basically, yeah, the mindset that I had back then. Bringing the best bits of that with the best things I've gained in the last, like, 5 or so years.
Take yourself back to your roots realistically, right? Like go back to know and understand this is exactly why I started, like, and be like, this is why I'm where I'm at, right?
Yeah, and sort of remembering that, at the end of the day, I got into this because it's fun. If I'm not enjoying it, like, okay, do I change directions? No, I don't want to change directions. Why not? Oh, okay, I enjoy flying. Okay, well, let's work out how to make more of this more enjoyable and more something that I want to keep doing. And the thing is, too, it's one of those, like, positive feedback loops where if you're having fun, you're going to fly more. You're going to fly more, you're going to get better. You're going to get better, you're going to have more fun. Like, you have to, it's sort of, yeah, it keeps yourself sort of positive building up. And trying to sort of hold that, I think is, or like, yeah, keep a healthy mindset is really, really critical, and probably realistically 90% of probably most things, actually.
Yeah, no, for sure, dude. I mean, hey, if you have a harsh mindset on yourself, then it's just gonna end up spiraling yourself downhill, and I guess that's where you get with burnout. I guess if you look at this hobby Well, I mean, obviously for you it's a profession, but for a lot of people it's, you know, a hobby side of things and the fun of it. Would you say, like, well, what would you say are some other mistakes or potentially other things that you've struggled with aside from mindset with racing? Or is there anything else?
Ooh. I mean, there's plenty of like skill things, but they're all very like personal, if that makes sense. Okay, I'll go to small tangent. I've got a really weird mindset with how I approach like explaining flying to other people. I sort of have this concept that the world is very fluid, very dynamic, right? Um, and maybe it's just because of like other ways I've been taught different sort of passions and things, but I almost don't like overcoaching or giving people like a mechanical principle of like, if you're here, do this, 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 and you'll get here. Because I almost feel like I'm going to box them in to that mindset, which might be a bit unrealistic to think of, but I'm always sort of paranoid that I'm going to like, say, give someone these ideas that, okay, they'll get them up to this level really quick, right? But then it's almost like you've gotten rid of their own individualistic ideas and concepts. And so I almost don't want to hinder those because it's like, that's the diversity. That's what makes racing beautiful. I think I love that right now in the racing space, you've got so many different approaches to a race frame, it's racing components. And I don't want to like, I don't want to get rid of those. Sort of like we look at maybe a lot of motorsports where things have really boiled down to specific formulas, which is partly because of rules and things to keep it affordable. But I love the fact that this hobby, there is so much diversity in the setups and approaches and styles. And I almost like love giving people the bare minimum info of like, have fun, practice a lot. Because it's like, that means whatever ideas and concepts they have, they can just fully explore those with no one telling them, oh no, your idea is wrong because of X, Y, Z. Just like explore it, see where it takes you. It might be good. Either way, you're going to learn, right? And then, that's where new ideas come from and new concepts and new designs and, new cinematic styles. I hate the thought of boxing people in. I'm like, no, don't box yourself in. Just like do whatever you want to do and have fun.
Dude, you're the
So, that
absolute
was not
most
really the question.
humble racer. No, you're the most humble racer. I love that. Like, I guess when such a competitive sport, like you got to have a part of you that's like, that understands. Yeah, hey, I'm actually damn good at racing, right? Like, but like you are so humble. It's like not even funny. It's just like, I don't even want to tell people like what I would do because then it might sort of limit them. It's like that's crazy, and like that's actually really cool though, at the same time. So we honestly appreciate that.
I feel like I have self-confidence in my flying. I think I just enjoy seeing other people's ideas there. I don't know. I like seeing what people create and I like watching people's adventures. I don't know. It's just fun. I like the fact that we're all different people. I think is cool. If we were all the same, that'd be a little boring.
And it really shows in the quads as well.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, where can people find you? Like, where you were mentioning you have a YouTube channel. What's your channel? Like, where can people go and actually see your racing?
So the main channel that you probably want to watch is youtube.com/BMSweb. That's sort of the channel that my dad and myself run, and that's where all of the proper polished, nice edits go. I do have a personal YouTube channel, BMS Thomas, and then the Instagrams are the same. So BMS Web, the BMS Web Instagram, and then my Instagram's BMS Thomas _ because someone else is BMS Thomas. So
bugger.
Yeah, but it's the socials. We have a Facebook group, BMS Racing, if you want to see some of the product development stuff we're working on, or if you've got a BMS product and you've got questions and you just want to share your love of, cool tech that exists. That's about it. Keep having fun flying. And also, Brody, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, dude. Thank you for coming on.